I'm excited to share a wild story from my life that's anything but ordinary. Buckle up, because this isn't your typical tale. So, my relationship took a shocking turn when I discovered the truth about my wife. Let's just say it didn't end with a celebratory toast. My wife cheated on me and married me just for a green card, which I made sure to rectify. Here's how it all began. I'm 28 and met Catalina, who's 27, back in college. We were out with friends when one of mine noticed she kept glancing my way. I couldn't help but check her out too. With some encouragement and a few drinks, I mustered the courage to approach her. She was with a couple of friends, which made it intimidating, but seeing a guy with one of the other girls eased my nerves. To my surprise, they were really laid back, and Catalina quickly accepted my offer for a drink. We hit it off, and after some time together, her friends left us to enjoy some privacy. The night was fantastic, and before I knew it, we were back at my place. Things escalated quickly. Within 2 months, we were officially a couple, and she moved in with me. Looking back, it all happened so fast, but it felt right at the time. Here's the kicker. Catalina was from Colombia on a student visa. She was upfront about it. Once we graduated, she'd need to find a job that could sponsor her visa to stay in the US. Unfortunately, as time passed, her plans didn't pan out, and neither of us wanted her to go back. She hadn't had great opportunities back home, and I wanted to help her find a way to stay. Back then, she was pursuing her bachelor's degree while I was working on my master's, and I admired her ambition to create a better life. We were deeply in love, but the job market was bleak, making it difficult for her to find a sponsor anytime soon. Feeling desperate, especially after dating for so long, we decided to get married. I had been considering it for a while. She was perfect for me in so many ways. While I would have liked to take more time for dating and engagement, I was ready to rush things to stay together. Catalina was supportive of a quick marriage, but I believed she deserved a ceremony, even a small one. Our finances were tight, so we kept it simple, inviting a few friends to celebrate. She didn't have family in the US, but some friends from the bar where we met, Rick, Emily, and Sarah, were there. Rick and Emily were dating, and it was heartwarming to see how happy they were for her. I couldn't help but feel a bit jealous, as some of my family, especially my mom, didn't approve. She thought I was rushing into things and suggested Catalina go back home instead of risking regret. We had argued about it, but she still attended the wedding, albeit with a sour expression. I accepted her presence as the best I could hope for. After the ceremony, we filed the necessary paperwork, and we were relieved when everything went smoothly. Catalina was granted permission to stay in the country, and she began focusing on her career. Finding a job was a relief, especially after the panic I felt a year ago. After our wedding, Catalina got her conditional green card, and life started to fall into place. She found a job, and my career was improving as well. We began making plans for our future, discussing where we wanted to live and how many kids we hoped to have. We even talked about me visiting her home country to meet her parents. It felt like everything was coming together. Although we had rushed into marriage, you wouldn't have guessed it by looking at us. She seemed perfect, always sweet and caring. We were genuinely happy. Rick, Emily, and Sarah were a constant presence in our lives. They were kind to Catalina, but they acted a bit awkward around me. Conversations would shift or pause when I entered the room, and I couldn't help but notice. I asked Catalina about it, but she reassured me it wasn't personal, just that our topics might be a bit dull. Things took a turn when Catalina planned her trip to Colombia to visit her family. I wanted to go, but the timing was off. I didn't have a remote job, and taking time off wasn't feasible. She would be gone for just 2 weeks, but the thought of being apart felt hard. While she was in Colombia, communication became difficult. She often blamed the poor cell service, but I suspected my calls were sometimes ignored. I knew she had a large family and was probably busy, so I tried to stay patient. The house was lively and bustling after all. When she returned, she seemed revitalized, almost like she was 10 years younger. I commented on how the trip seemed to do her good, and she agreed, but whenever I asked for details about her time there, she would respond vaguely. Her secretiveness was frustrating, but other than that, Everything else felt unchanged. Sure, one day, while Catalina was in the kitchen, I noticed a notification from someone named Lewis pop up on her phone. The name was unfamiliar, and it sparked my suspicion. Catalina usually shared everything with me. She loved to gossip about her co-workers, but I had never heard of Lewis before. Curious, I peeked into the kitchen. Catalina was busy at the sink, her back to me, so I quietly went back to her phone. I swiped down to open the notification tray and expanded the message from Lewis. It was written in Spanish. I had been learning a bit from Catalina, but my skills were lacking, and I couldn't grasp the full meaning. I thought about using Google Translate, but then remembered Google Lens. Thank goodness for that. I pulled out my phone, and the app translated the message overlaid on the original text. It seemed harmless enough at first glance, something about maybe next time, but it left me feeling uneasy. What did next time imply? No matter how I tried to rationalize it, it didn't sit right with me. I decided to confront her directly. I wanted to be honest. Checking her phone felt like a breach of trust, and I knew it would only lead to trouble if she caught me snooping. "Babe, who's Louis?" I asked. She didn't miss a beat, continuing her task. "Just a guy from work," she replied, her tone even, movement steady. Everything seemed normal, but I couldn't shake my doubt. "Why do I not remember you mentioning him?" I pressed. "He's good friends with Steve," she added, referring to a name I recognized from her stories. I paused, trying to recall any mention of Lewis, but nothing came to mind. It hit me. Either I was forgetting something important, or my wife was lying effortlessly. I narrated the message I saw, asking for clarification. With the same calm demeanor, she explained it was just about letting her. "I'm just joking about taking credit for a work project. I didn't actually do any of it, so I don't deserve the credit." I've reached the end of my questioning, but I'm still not satisfied. The problem is, I'm not sure how to move forward. Should I confront her again, snoop through her phone, or try to catch her in a lie? I really don't want to believe my wife is being dishonest, but I sense she's hiding something. On the other hand, part of me thinks she might be telling the truth, since she didn't even flinch when I mentioned the name. I need clarity, otherwise it'll drive me crazy. I know I don't want to be the guy who sneaks into his wife's phone, but I also don't want to be the one who just lets things slide. When I asked about Lewis, she handled it so easily that it felt rehearsed. Honestly, if I wait too long, he might send a follow-up text asking if she's free this weekend. So here's the update. I caught my wife texting a guy named Lewis, someone I've never heard of. She claims she talks about him all the time. I got a great tip from someone about checking her social media follower lists instead of digging through her phone, and it worked. I started with Facebook, since she uses it the most, and I found 2 Louises. One was much younger and worked somewhere completely different. The other was a handsome guy living in Colombia. That sent a chill down my spine. I opened his account, but there wasn't much info, just a few photos and some uninteresting posts in Spanish. When I translated them, I started to suspect this could be the Louis she mentioned. I wondered if they were planning to meet next time she was in Colombia, or if something else was going on. I'm trying to piece together what happened the last time she was in Colombia. Did she actually see this guy? Why did she claim he was just a co-worker? I briefly wondered if Lisis was even a real friend on Facebook, but given how much she loves the platform, anyone important to her would likely be there. The more I thought about it, the more unsettling clues I found, and no matter how I arranged them, they painted a troubling picture. I decided I needed to check her phone to confirm my suspicions. Luckily, Catalina was pretty careless with it. She often left it lying around and sometimes forgot where she'd put it. I took my chance when she was in the living room watching TV, leaving her phone on the bed. I unlocked it and opened her messages, finding the conversation with LS. Using Google Translate, I began to read through the texts, and what I discovered shocked me. All this time, my perfect wife had been in a relationship with Louis, dating him since before she moved to the US, even before I met her. They had spent days together during her last trip to Colombia. I found myself staring at the translated messages, feeling my world crumble. All the love, trust, and dreams we'd shared. It was all a facade. Catalina had been an amazing partner, but it was clear she had been playing a role, biding her time until she could become a citizen and then leave me for him. Can you imagine realizing your entire relationship was a lie? My feelings were genuine, but it was clear I had been used. It got worse when I discovered that her friends were in on it too. They had all known about her plan. I felt like a pawn in their elaborate scheme, and that's when I truly began to spiral. I'm documenting everything. I wasn't just being cheated on, I was being used and deceived. I wasn't just a victim of infidelity, I was a victim of a crime. I had recorded messages from Lewis and Emily and was working on Rick's when Catalina walked in. When she saw me with her phone, she froze, as if she'd seen a ghost. I must have looked as hurt and angry as I felt, because she immediately realized the truth. She stood there, eyes wide, trying to figure out what to do next. My anger spilled over. I jumped to my feet and shouted, "You've been using me this whole time!" I was furious. She took a step toward me, saying, "That's not true. Please, let me explain." I pointed her phone at her and said, "I know everything. This goes back to the night we met. You and your friends were looking for someone to take advantage of. You made this plan with Lewis before you even left Colombia. That was before I fell in love with you. Everything after that was real. I saw the messages. You were with him when you went back. Don't lie to me." She fell silent, and I waited for a response. Eventually, she said, "I really do love you. It's complicated and it's over with him. I made a stupid mistake." I showed her the texts where he said he was counting down the days until I was out of the picture. She started to spin another excuse, but I cut her off. "Here's what's going to happen. You'll leave the house immediately because I can't stand to be around you. After that, I'm compiling all the evidence I have and reporting you for immigration fraud. If you cared for Lewis so much, I won't rest until you're deported." Now she was crying, struggling to find her words, asking for a chance to explain. I walked past her, pushing her phone back into her chest, hearing her sob as she tried to plead with me. I told her I was leaving. I told her she had 30 minutes to leave. If she was still there when I returned, I would call the police. I doubted they would take action based on text messages, but I knew she wouldn't want to risk it. I realized I had made a mistake. Everything had become so complicated, and I didn't know how to resolve it. She was visibly shaken, upset, and terrified, which gave me a sense of satisfaction. I felt justified. I slammed the door behind me, got into my car, and drove aimlessly for a while, trying to figure out my next move. Was there any chance of a future with my wife? Could I forgive her and we work through this? No, I couldn't. She had deceived me from the start. There was no future for us. When I got home, she was gone. I needed time to think, so her absence was a relief. What frustrated me was her constant texting and calling, which I ignored as I tried to sort out my feelings. I knew there was no moving forward with our marriage, but I wanted her to feel the consequences of her actions. It struck me how right my mum had been all along. Catalina had been playing a long game, and the thought of her friends being involved made it even worse. It was heartbreaking to realize that I had been betrayed not just by her, but by a whole group who saw me as just a pawn in their scheme. "I'm truly sorry you're going through this. Stay strong. You deserve so much better." This situation was never about you not being enough. It was about her dishonesty and manipulation. You have every right to seek justice for the pain she caused. Update 2. I'm back with my final update. This chapter of my life is finally over, and I felt it was important to share this with you all. I wanted to update you on how things turned out. Thanks to some solid legal advice from a few of you, the whole process became much more manageable. Catalina kept trying to reach out, but I ignored her. She never showed up at my home, probably out of fear that I'd call the police if I saw her. Each notification from her fueled my anger, but then she unexpectedly appeared at my workplace. Maybe she thought it would be safer to confront me there, hoping I wouldn't want to make a scene. She was waiting in the parking lot by my car, looking disheveled, dark circles under her eyes and her usually neat hair in disarray. I couldn't tell if she was more afraid or heartbroken, likely more about her thwarted plans for citizenship than our breakup. But honestly, I was just pleased to see her like this. She rushed over, rambling about the serious mistakes she made and how she was caught up in lies. She claimed the last few days made her realize she truly loves me and doesn't want Lewis anymore. I told her she was wasting her breath and mentioned that I had already filed a report and spoken to an immigration lawyer. That broke her down again. She insisted we could fix things and start over, even grabbing my arm and telling me she'd ended things with Lewis. I replied that she could beg him to take her back, as he'd soon be all she had left. Her tears started flowing again, and I couldn't understand why I was supposed to believe she had suddenly changed. As I tried to get into my car, she held onto my arm, but let go when I threatened to add assault to the list of her offenses. I got in and told her that if she had any sense, she'd leave the country before she got deported. I felt a twisted satisfaction as I drove away, watching her crumble to the ground. In the rearview mirror, a few weeks passed after our confrontation, and I stopped hearing from her. I was busy reporting her to the proper authorities. My lawyer assured me it was only a matter of time before her case progressed, given the damning evidence. I tried to put Catalina out of my mind and move on with my life. One evening, after a tough day at work, there was a knock at my door. When I opened it, I saw Catalina's friend, Emily, looking very uncomfortable. "Can we talk?" she asked quietly. I hesitated, then nodded and invited her in. We settled into the living room, and I waited for her to speak. "I know you have no reason to trust me, and I'm sorry for everything that happened," she began. "But you need to know what's going on." She explained that Catalina was facing deportation and that the authorities had already begun the process. Catalina wanted to ask for my help one last time, but was too scared to come to me herself. Emily added that Catalina had said my expression had frightened her during our last encounter. I took a moment to absorb this news, feeling a sense of satisfaction that Catalina was facing consequences for her actions. "Thank you for telling me, but there's nothing I can do at this point. Even if I could, I wouldn't. Make sure you tell her that." Emily's face fell and she looked visibly uncomfortable. "She really does love you. She got caught up in this mess, and we know it was wrong. But she wants to fix it now. Things are over with Louis too. He said he was done with her when he heard she might be deported." "I don't care," I said, my frustration bubbling over. "I'm done being manipulated by you guys. You know where the door is." Emily looked at me, perhaps hoping for some sign of compassion. When she saw none, she quietly left. Just this morning, I finally received the closure I had been waiting for. Catalina was officially facing deportation. Deported back to Colombia, I felt as if a weight had been lifted. Being in a different country, on an entirely different continent, made the nightmare feel finally over. Now I can focus on rebuilding my life, though it might take a lot of work. I feel deeply betrayed. Everything was a lie, no matter how much she tried to convince me otherwise. Still, I know I'll rise again. Her sudden declaration of love, claiming she didn't want to lose me, felt like a last-ditch effort to regain control. But I saw right through it. I respect how you stood your ground when you received the news of Catalina's deportation. It must have been bittersweet, but she made her choices, and now she has to live with them. What would you have done if you found out something like this? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for joining us today on Our Space. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you won't miss our next video. See you soon.